What if I told you that the most terrifying night of my life taught me that monsters aren't always what you'd expect them to be? My name's Jake, and for more than 15 years I've worked cattle ranches across East Texas. Hard land, hard work, long days under a blistering sun. That's who I am. Not a storyteller, not some fellow trying to scare folks with tall tales. But what happened to me last October, on a night when the moon all but disappeared from the sky? Well, that's the reason you're hearing my voice tonight, and so here's my story. I've always believed in what I could touch. The fence line under my gloves, the horse between my knees, the steady breath of a herd of cattle. Practical things. But there are nights when the practical cracks wide open, and something else, something you can't explain, steps through. This story is one of those nights. The Double R Ranch stretched across 3,000 acres of pasture and woodland. To the west, mesquite trees clawed the sky, and to the east, thick pine forests grew darker and more secretive the deeper you went. The land rolled out in waves of grass and dirt roads, crisscrossed with barbed wire and split-rail fencing older than I was. The kind of country where you can go a week without seeing another soul, and where a man learns to rely on himself. The nearest town was 40 miles away, and cell service out here was about as dependable as an honest politician. That evening was like any other, at first. The sun was melting into the horizon, turning the sky every shade of orange, purple, and red. Folks say Texas sunsets are something you can paint, but out here on the range they feel alive, like the sky itself is breathing its last before night swallows it whole. My horse, Buster, a tough-as-nails quarter horse who'd been with me 8 years, kept shifting under me. Normally he was steady as a rock, even when rattlesnakes slithered across our path or wild hogs bolted from the brush. But that night he twitched and stamped, ears flicking toward the tree line like he heard something I couldn't. The herd wasn't right either. Instead of their usual calm, spread out across the pasture, grazing lazily, they were clustered tight in the center, heads all turned toward the pines. Their big eyes glinted in the fading light, wide and fearful. Cattle aren't smart, but they know when danger's close. Over the years, I'd learned to trust their instincts. And then I heard it. A sound so strange it froze me in the saddle. It wasn't a howl. It wasn't a growl. It was something in between, stretched low and resonant, as though the forest itself had found a voice. It wasn't the call of coyotes, and it sure wasn't a wolf. No, this was deeper, sharper, intelligent, even like something announcing itself, testing the air, daring me to come closer. I should have turned around right then. Should have headed back to the bunkhouse, poured myself a black coffee, and forgotten the whole thing. But curiosity's a dangerous thing. Against my better judgment, I slid out of the saddle, tied Buster to the fence post, and walked toward the dark edge of the pasture. I didn't raise my flashlight, didn't call out, just moved slow, letting the starlight and my memory of the land guide me. The closer I got to the tree line, the stronger the smell became. Musky, wild, and sharp, like wet dog mixed with iron. It clung to the air, thick and primal. And beneath it, another smell, the unmistakable tang of fresh blood. My gut twisted. Something had already been hunting. That's when I found the tracks. Huge paw prints, twice the size of any wolf I'd ever seen, pressed deep into the damp earth near the creek. The claws carved gouges that could have shredded steel. But the strangest part, the heel. It was wrong. Stretched long, too human in shape, like the foot of something walking on the edge between man and beast. A branch cracked to my left. My hand went to the Colt .45 at my hip, heart hammering. And then, from behind a massive oak, it stepped out. The creature stood nearly 6 feet tall at the shoulder, on all fours, covered in black fur so dark it swallowed the starlight. Its eyes glowed with a reflection that wasn't just animal instinct. It was recognition, intelligence, calculating me as much as I was calculating it. We stared at each other. My whole body screamed at me to shoot, to run, to do something. But before I could decide, it did something that nearly knocked me to my knees. It sat down, like a dog waiting for a command, head tilted, watching me with eerie curiosity. And that was only the beginning. They say when you look into a predator's eyes, you can feel the truth of what you're facing. I'd stared down mountain lions before, even a rabid coyote or two. Their gaze is wild, frantic, driven by hunger. But this creature? This thing crouched in the moonless dark of the Double R's pines? Its eyes weren't desperate. They were calm, cold, studying me with a patience I'd only ever seen in people. I stood there with my hand frozen on the grip of my Colt. My mind spun with choices: shoot, run, shout for help, but none of them felt right. I was 30 miles from another ranch hand, 40 from town. Out here, it was just me, my horse, and this thing. The silence was unbearable. Even the crickets had gone quiet. The night air pressed against me, thick and waiting. Then, without warning, the creature rose to its full height. I swear to you, it stood upright. Its back cracked and straightened, claws stretching as it shifted from all fours to two legs. It towered over me, maybe 7 feet tall, muscles rippling beneath its black fur. The sight was so unnatural my stomach lurched. Every instinct told me to flee, but my boots felt nailed to the earth. It didn't lunge, didn't growl. It simply stared, tilting its head like a man curious about a stray dog. Then its nostrils flared, catching the scent of the cattle beyond the fence. That's when I realized why the herd had gathered so tight in the pasture. They weren't waiting for me. They were waiting for it. A sudden commotion behind me snapped me out of my trance. The cattle bellowed, panicked. I spun, and in the faint light of my lantern, I saw one of the steers break from the group. It bolted toward the creek, hooves pounding the dirt. The creature reacted instantly. With a speed I can't even put into words, it blurred past me. So fast the wind of its movement rocked me sideways. One moment it was yards away. The next, it vanished into the tree line. The steer's terrified cries echoed in the dark, followed by a sound that makes me shiver even now, bones snapping like twigs. By the time I reached the creek, lantern swinging wildly, the steer was down. Its massive body lay still in the grass, throat torn open with surgical precision. And standing over it was the creature, its muzzle soaked red that I raised my gun. My hand shook so bad the barrel rattled against my belt buckle. "Back!" I shouted, my voice breaking. "Get the hell away!" The creature lifted its head. Blood dripped from its teeth, glinting dark in the lantern light. And then, it did something impossible. It backed away, slowly, as if it understood me. It crouched at the edge of the creek, licking its claws. Then, in a voice so low I thought my mind was cracking, it growled. Not like an animal, but like words buried in gravel. I couldn't make them out, but the intention was clear. It was warning me. And just as quickly as it had come, it turned and vanished into the pine shadows, leaving nothing but silence and the smell of blood. I staggered back to Buster, untied the reins with trembling fingers, and mounted up. Every nerve screamed for me to ride hard back to the bunkhouse. But something in me, some mix of fear and stubborn curiosity, made me circle the pasture one last time. That's when I saw it. The fence near the creek wasn't just broken, it had been cut. Clean slices through barbed wire, the kind no wolf or cougar could make. I slid off Buster and crouched, lantern shaking in my hand. The wire ends gleamed with fresh cuts, too sharp to be chewed or torn. That wasn't nature's work. That was a hand, or claws used like one. The realization twisted my gut. This wasn't some wild beast stumbling into cattle land. No, this thing had purpose, intent. It had chosen the Double R. When I finally returned to the bunkhouse, the night was silent again, as though nothing had happened. But I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those tracks, those glowing eyes, that strange moment when it listened to me, because I knew deep down this wasn't the last time I'd see it. And maybe it wasn't the enemy I thought it was. By morning, the Double R looked like it always did, sunlight spilling over rolling pasture, wind stirring the tall grass, cattle lowing in the distance. A man could almost believe the night before had been some fever dream. Almost. But when the ranch hands rode out at dawn and found the steer, its throat torn, belly opened like a butcher's table, the dream died fast. I watched their faces as they circled the carcass. Hardened men, the kind who'd spent their lives roping broncs, branding calves, and putting down rabid coyotes without blinking. But none of them spoke right away. They just stared, hats pulled low, eyes darting from the body to the tree line. Finally, old Donnie, who'd been riding the double R since before I was born, spit a stream of tobacco juice into the dirt and muttered, "That ain't no cat did this." His words cracked the silence, and suddenly the others were murmuring, their voices tight. A mountain lion, a wolf, maybe a bear wandering down from Oklahoma. But their eyes betrayed them. They didn't believe it. Not one bit. I stayed quiet. I wanted to tell them what I'd seen, what I'd heard, that the thing stood like a man, that it had backed off when I shouted, that it had spoken in a voice too low to belong to an animal. But the words caught in my throat. These men respected me, trusted me to work alongside them. If I told the truth, they'd laugh, call me sleep-deprived, maybe worse. Or worse still, they'd believe me. And I wasn't ready for that. So I said nothing, just knelt by the carcass, examining the wounds. The cuts were too clean, too deliberate. Whoever, or whatever, had done this wasn't just feeding. It was sending a message. Later, in the bunkhouse, the whispers started. 2 years ago, same thing happened. Down near the Miller spread. Cows gutted, fence cut clean through. I heard tell of something out by the river back in the 70s. Tore a man's dog to pieces, but left him alone. Maybe it's the guardian. That word made me look up. Guardian. A wiry hand named Caleb leaned forward, lowering his voice. My granddad used to talk about it. Said the land's got a protector. Big, black, walks on 2 legs sometimes, for others. Not man, not beast. Shows up when something worse is coming. The others chuckled nervously, but no one told him to shut up. Out here, legends are just truths waiting for proof. I couldn't get that word out of my head. Guardian. I didn't believe in bedtime stories. But after what I'd seen in the pines, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, that's what I'd stumbled into that night. Lying in my bunk, I kept hearing the sound of the wires snapping under sharp claws. I kept seeing those glowing eyes, intelligent and unblinking. And then the dream started. I was standing in the pasture again, lantern in hand, the herd pressing close behind me. But this time, the creature wasn't hunting cattle. It was circling me. Its movements were deliberate, almost ritual. And in the dream, I wasn't afraid. Not exactly. I was chosen. I woke in a cold sweat, heart thundering, the bunkhouse still quiet. But when I sat up and looked out the window toward the tree line, I swore I saw it again. Just a silhouette, tall and broad, standing perfectly still at the edge of the pines. Watching, waiting. I blinked. And it was gone to be why the end of that week, the men were restless. Half of them wanted to set traps. The other half wanted to leave it alone. And me? I didn't know what I wanted anymore. All I knew was that something had claimed the double R. And whatever it wasn't finished. The following evening, the ranch was restless again. The cattle wouldn't settle, and Buster, my old quarter horse, kept snorting and pawing at the dirt like he wanted no part of what was coming. I tried to tell myself it was just nerves, mine feeding theirs. But when you live on a spread as wide and empty as the double R, you learn quick. The animals know first. They sense the storm before the clouds build, the snake before the grass stirs, the predator before you ever hear the growl. By dusk, I decided I couldn't take another night of lying awake wondering. I saddled Buster, slung my rifle across my back, and rode out toward the creek where I'd found those impossible tracks. The forest was darker than it should have been, not just from the moonless sky, but as if the trees themselves pressed closer, blotting out the starlight. The air carried that same musky, feral scent I'd caught before, mixed with the copper tang of old blood. I dismounted at the water's edge and tied Buster to a post oak. He nickered low, shifting nervously, and I patted his flank. Easy, boy. I won't be long. Truth was, I didn't believe that promise myself that I hadn't gone 10 paces when I heard it. A branch snapping, deliberate. Not the careless crack of a deer, not the quick rustle of a coyote. This was intentional, like someone letting me know I wasn't alone. I raised the lantern, its glow catching on the low mist rising from the creek bed. And then I saw it again. The figure stepped into view, half shadow, half beast. Shoulders broad as a bull, fur matted with dew, claws glinting like knives. Its eyes burned like coals, fixed on me, not with hunger, but with intent, and my hand went to my rifle. But I didn't raise it. Something in me knew that would end the wrong way. Instead, I stood frozen, heart hammering so loud I wondered if it could hear. The creature tilted its head, and then it moved, slow, deliberate, closing the distance between us with a predator's grace. I wanted to back away, but my boots felt rooted in the mud. When it stopped a few yards away, it crouched low, dragging one claw through the dirt. It carved a line, then another crossing it. A crude shape, but unmistakable. A cross, or maybe an X. A warning. I frowned, trying to make sense of it. "What are you trying to tell me?" I whispered, though my voice cracked. The creature's ears flicked back, then forward. And for the briefest moment, I swear I saw its jaw move as if forming words. The sound that followed was not quite speech, not quite a growl, something between. A low, rumbling utterance that made my skin prickle. I didn't understand the language, if it even was one. But the meaning sank into me all the same. Danger. Keep watch. Before I could respond, the wind shifted. A new sound tore through the forest, a chorus of yips and howls, shrill and chaotic, echoing from the north ridge. Coyotes. A whole pack, by the sound of it. But woven into that frenzy was something deeper, more savage, like wolves driven mad with bloodlust. The creature stiffened, ears perked, muscles coiled. Then it looked at me, right into me, with eyes that blazed brighter than firelight. Guardian, I thought. Caleb's word whispered in my skull. This wasn't the killer. This was the one standing between us and something worse. The beast lifted its head and loosed a howl, long and resonant, unlike anything I'd ever heard. It shook the trees, rattled the very bones of the land. And the other cries in the distance faltered, hesitated. Then, as quick as it came, the creature turned and vanished into the pines. Melting into the darkness like it was made of shadow, that I stood there trembling, lantern shaking in my grip, staring at the X gouged into the dirt. A mark of protection or a grave warning. I couldn't decide. When I untied Buster, he bolted before I could even mount, dragging me halfway across the pasture before I hauled him in. I didn't blame him. My own legs felt like jelly, my chest still tight with the echo of that inhuman howl. Back at the bunkhouse, the men were already stirring from the racket. They asked me what I'd seen, and once again, I told them nothing. Not the truth, anyway. Some things you keep to yourself until the time is right. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I knew the line had been drawn. Whatever haunted those woods was closing in, and the Guardian, whatever it truly was, wanted me ready. The war for the double R had only just begun. Morning came heavy and slow, like the land itself didn't want to wake. I rose before the sun, restless from another night of half-sleep filled with shifting shadows and phantom howls. The men were already saddling up when I stepped outside. Nobody joked over coffee, nobody swapped stories. The bunkhouse felt like a church before a funeral, quiet, reverent, grim. We rode out together, spreading across the pasture in a loose line. It didn't take long to find the trail. Blood, dark and tacky, smeared along the barbed wire that bordered the north pasture. The fence posts leaned, wire snapped in places like something massive had forced its way through. I dismounted and crouched near the stain. It was fresh, no more than a few hours old. And the tracks, God, those tracks. Huge, clawed prints pressed into the damp soil, the shape all wrong for any natural predator. The men gathered around, muttering under their breath. "Wolf," one said. "Too big," another countered. "Cougar then." "Since when does a cougar bust through barbed wire?" I said nothing, just traced the print with my finger. The claw marks gouged deep, sharper than steel. And alongside them, smaller prints, dozens of them. Coyotes. A whole pack moving with the larger beast. The air carried that musky, copper scent again, and my gut twisted. Whatever had come through here, it wasn't hunting alone. That we followed the trail into the trees, the morning light swallowed by the dense canopy. After half a mile, we found it, another carcass. This time, a heifer torn apart, ribcage splintered open like kindling. The coyotes had fed, their smaller bites ragged around the edges. But the first wound, the one that spilled her out across the leaves, that was surgical, deliberate. Donnie, grizzled and gray, crossed himself. This ain't no natural predator. Something else is driving them. The men looked to me like I had the answer. But what could I say? That a hulking shadow beast had carved warnings in the dirt for me? That it had howled like a king commanding an army? No, not yet. Instead, I told them we needed to reinforce the fences, double the night watches, keep rifles close. They nodded, grateful for orders. Men like us do better with work than with fear. Back at the ranch, we set to mending wire. I worked side by side with Caleb, the wiry hand who'd spoken of the guardian. His face was pale, lips pressed tight, but his eyes burned with something between fear and faith. "You saw it, didn't you?" he muttered, low so the others wouldn't hear it. My hands froze on the fence pliers. Saw what? The guardian. My granddad wasn't lying. It's out there, watching. Maybe fighting off whatever's coming. You can feel it in your bones when it's close. I didn't answer, just kept working, but my silence told him enough. Caleb gave a tight nod and didn't press further. That night, we set a fire near the corrals, the glow casting long shadows over the restless herd. The cattle lowed nervously, hooves shuffling in the dirt. Every now and then, one would startle and the whole herd would surge, pressed together like they were waiting for the axe. The men took shifts, rifles across their knees, eyes scanning the tree line. Coyotes yipped in the distance, their cries rising and falling in chaotic chorus. But beneath it, carried on the wind, I thought I heard something else. A deeper growl. A presence. Near midnight, one of the younger hands, Ricky, called out. He'd spotted movement along the fence. We all scrambled, rifles ready, hearts pounding. At the edge of the firelight lay another sign, left plain as day. A calf's hide, bloodied and torn, draped over the wire like some twisted banner. The poor creature itself was nowhere to be found. The men swore and spat, anger flashing in their eyes, but underneath it all was fear. Fear sharp enough to taste in the back of your throat that I stared at that hide for a long time, while burning in my gut. This wasn't just killing. It was a message. Someone, or something, was staking a claim. And I knew in my bones it wasn't the guardian. The guardian had warned me. Whatever left this grisly token wasn't here to protect. It was here to consume. As the fire crackled and the coyotes sang, I kept my hand on the stock of my rifle, praying the dawn would come fast. But deep down, I knew we were running out of time. The war on the Double R wasn't waiting. It had already begun. The attack came sooner than any of us expected. That we'd spent the day hard at work, tightening fences, checking rifle stocks, moving the herd closer to the corrals. The men worked without complaint, though the tension was thick enough to choke on. Every clang of a hammer against fence posts, every whinny of a nervous horse, echoed like a warning bell. By dusk, a heavy silence settled over the Double R. No crickets, no night birds, not even the wind moving through the mesquite. It was the kind of silence that only comes when predators are near. We lit fires along the perimeter, bright torches hissing in the dry air, trying to carve out an island of safety. The cattle milled tight inside the corral, eyes rolling white, their fear palpable. I'd taken first watch with Caleb, the one man who seemed to believe the guardian was real. We sat near the southern fence, rifles ready, ears straining in the dark. For a while, there was nothing, just the crackle of firewood and the shifting weight of restless steers. Then we heard it. A single yip, high and sharp, carrying through the night air. Then another, and another. Soon the sound multiplied into a chorus, dozens of coyote voices rising and falling in manic rhythm. But this wasn't normal. Coyotes yap and laugh, scatter and regroup, their calls wild and chaotic. This was organized, coordinated, like soldiers calling signals in the dark. "They're coming," Caleb muttered, knuckles white on his rifle. Shapes moved in the firelight, low and fast, circling the corral. Coyotes, lean and mangy, eyes reflecting red. But they didn't charge right away. They hung back, darting just inside the glow and then slipping away, testing us. The cattle bawled, pressing against the wooden rails. Horses in the barn kicked and snorted, sensing what was near. Every hair on the back of my neck stood on end. Then, through the trees, came a figure that made my blood run cold. Larger than any coyote, larger even than a wolf, it stalked forward with a commanding presence. Its eyes glowed hotter, brighter, and the smaller coyotes melted aside to give it room. This was their leader, their master. I raised my rifle, but my finger froze on the trigger. The thing looked wrong. Its legs too long, its shoulders too high, its gait half-human. When it bared its teeth, I saw something almost like a grin. The pack surged. Coyotes poured through gaps in the fence, scrambling under rails, snapping at the cattle. The herd panicked, slamming against the corral walls. Men shouted, firing rifles into the night. The reports cracked like thunder, and several coyotes dropped, but more replaced them. Relentless. I fired until my shoulder ached, each shot finding its mark. But it was like bailing water from a sinking ship. For every body that hit the dirt, 3 more came snarling out of the dark. Then I saw it, the leader. It moved with terrifying speed, slipping between the fires, bounding toward the corral. The coyotes gave it space, following its lead. Its claws raked the wooden rails, splinters flying. The herd screamed in unison, hooves pounding in terror. I lined up my sights, breath shallow, ready to put a bullet between those burning eyes. But before I could squeeze the trigger, a sound split the night. A howl. Not from the pack, from deeper in the woods, low at first, then rising into a keening wail that made the earth itself seem to vibrate. It was long, powerful, resonant, an alpha's call, and the reaction was immediate. The coyotes faltered, cries breaking into confusion. The leader froze, head snapping toward the trees. Out of the darkness came another shape, larger still, a black mass of muscle and fur. The guardian. It hit the ground between us and the pack like a storm breaking. Its growl rolled through the pasture, deeper than thunder. The coyotes hesitated, their courage draining in the face of something greater. The leader snarled and lunged, and the guardian met it head-on. The clash was violent, primal, a blur of claws and fangs. The men shouted, rifles forgotten, watching as 2 nightmares tore at each other in the firelight. The pack broke. Coyotes scattered into the trees, yelping, tails tucked. But the leader fought on, locked in brutal combat with the guardian. They slammed into the fence, snapping posts like twigs, rolling in a frenzy of teeth and fur. That I wanted to help, to fire, to do something, but I couldn't tell one from the other in the frenzy. All I could do was hold my ground as sparks flew from the fires and cattle stampeded in terror. At last, the leader wrenched free, blood streaming from its side. It cast one last burning look at the guardian, then at me, and melted into the forest, its pack scattering with it. The guardian stood panting, chest heaving, eyes blazing. It turned its head toward me, and for a moment, I swear I saw understanding there. A promise. Then it disappeared into the night as quickly as it had come. The ranch was chaos, broken fences, scattered cattle, blood on the dirt, but we were alive. And as I stood among the wreckage, one thought burned in my mind. The guardian wasn't just protecting the herd. It was protecting me. Dawn crawled over the ranch like a wounded animal, slow and uneven. Smoke still curled from the half-burned torches, the fires reduced to ash and ember. The corral looked like a battlefield, rails splintered, hoofprints churned deep into the dirt, blood drying black in the dust. The cattle, what remained of them, pressed tight together, trembling and wide-eyed. The men were ghosts, pale and hollow after the night's chaos. They moved quietly, repairing what they could, dragging coyote carcasses to a pit out back. No one spoke of what we'd seen. No one dared name the thing that had fought for us in the firelight. I walked the perimeter alone, boots crunching over trampled earth. Every broken fence post, every smear of blood carried weight. This wasn't just an attack on livestock. It was a siege, a test. And though the guardian had driven the pack back, I knew it wasn't over. Predators don't give up. They regroup. By the eastern fence, I found something that froze me where I stood. Carved into the dirt again, just like before, was a symbol. Fresh this time, clear as bone. Two intersecting lines forming an X, with a circle burned around it. Not paw prints, not claws. A mark. The Guardian's mark.it was a message, and I understood it plain. We are bound now. I don't know how long I stared at it, the rising sun throwing pale gold across the field. My hands shook, not from fear exactly, but from the weight of knowing. Whatever was happening here, whatever battle was raging between predator and protector, I wasn't just a bystander anymore. I was a piece of it. Caleb approached from behind, quiet as a shadow. You see it too, he said. Not a question. I nodded, still staring at the mark. My granddad told me once, Caleb went on, that the Guardian only shows itself when it chooses someone. Picks a man to stand beside it. Not as an equal, but as a witness. A tether, maybe. His words sat heavy. Chosen. Witness. Tether. I thought of the way the Guardian had looked at me after the fight, eyes burning with recognition. It hadn't been chance that brought it to the double R. Caleb gave a humorless laugh. Don't matter what you want. It's already done. We stood there in silence, the morning wind carrying the smell of blood and ash. Somewhere in the distance, a crow called, sharp and lonely by midday. The men gathered around the bunkhouse table, waiting for me to speak. They didn't say it outright, but the look in their eyes was clear. I was foreman, yes, but after last night, they saw me as something else. The one who had stood closest to the Guardian. The one who somehow walked away touched, not torn apart. So I told them the truth. Not all of it. Not the carved marks or Caleb's talk of choosing, but enough. I told them the pack wasn't just animals, that something darker was driving them. That we weren't just defending cattle. We were standing against whatever stalked these woods. They listened, silent, faces set like stone. And when I told them we'd keep fighting, that we'd hold this ranch no matter what came, they nodded. Not with the eagerness of men chasing glory, but with the grim acceptance of men who knew they had no choice. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat outside with my rifle, watching the tree line. The coyotes hadn't returned, but I could feel them, lingering out there, waiting. My eyes burned from exhaustion, my body ached, but my mind wouldn't rest. Every shadow shifted, every gust of wind carried whispers. And then, just before midnight, I saw it, the Guardian. It stood beyond the fence, massive and black against the silver moonlight. Its breath steamed in the cold air, its eyes burning like coals. It didn't approach, didn't threaten. It only watched as I rose to my feet, rifle hanging forgotten at my side. For a long moment, we simply stared at each other across the distance. Predator and man, beast and witness, bound together by something older than either of us could name. Finally, it tipped its head, slow and deliberate, as if acknowledging me. Then it melted into the trees, leaving only silence behind. That I sat back down, my heart pounding. The pact was sealed. Whether I wanted it or not, the Guardian had claimed me, and deep down, I knew the next time the pack came, it wouldn't just be after the cattle.it would be after me. The fire started in the barn.it was past midnight, the men restless in their bunks, me pacing the yard with a rifle slung across my chest. The cattle had been quiet for hours, the kind of quiet that unsettles a rancher more than noise ever could. I was half dozing on my feet when the smell hit, sharp and acrid, cutting through the night air. Smoke. By the time I rounded the corner, flames were already licking through the dry hay, climbing the rafters like greedy fingers. Horses screamed inside, thrashing against their stalls. Men poured from the bunkhouse, shouting, hauling buckets, but the fire spread too fast. It wasn't an accident. The heat, the speed, it was deliberate, and then I heard it. The coyotes. Not distant this time, not circling. They were here, pouring in from the tree line, dozens of them, eyes glowing, teeth flashing. They darted through the smoke and chaos, snapping at men's heels, lunging at the panicked herd. Their cries rose in a frenzied chorus, a war song that I fired into the swarm, each shot cracking like thunder, bodies dropping in the dirt. But for every one that fell, more surged forward. The night was alive with their movement, a river of teeth and fur and malice. The cattle panicked, slamming through the weakened corral. 100 hooves thundered into the open pasture, scattering into the dark. Men shouted, cursed, fought to hold their ground, but we were overwhelmed. And then I saw it, looming through the firelight. The leader, bigger now, its body swollen with sinew, its form almost human in its upright stance. Its eyes locked on me across the burning yard, and I felt the weight of its hunger. This wasn't about the cattle anymore. This was personal. It howled, a guttural, bone-deep sound, and the pack surged harder that I braced myself, rifle shaking in my grip. But before it reached me, the air split with another howl, deeper, stronger, resonant with power. The Guardian.it exploded from the tree-line, a black mass of muscle and fury, slamming into the leader with earth-shaking force. The two titans clashed, snapping jaws and raking claws, their roars louder than the fire itself. Sparks rained down around them, illuminating a battle older than memory. The men froze, some in terror, some in awe, as the fight raged. Coyotes swirled around us, but without their master's command, they faltered, confused. We cut them down where we could, but our eyes kept dragging back to the duel in the flames. The leader was fast, vicious, striking with a feral intelligence that chilled me. The Guardian was raw power, its body built for destruction, every blow shaking the ground. Blood sprayed across the dirt, black and steaming in the firelight. I realized then that this wasn't just a fight for dominance. It was a fight for territory, for ownership of the double R. And through the bond one didn't want but couldn't deny, I felt it in my chest. The Guardian wasn't only defending the herd. It was defending me. The barn collapsed with a deafening crack, flames roaring higher. Men dragged terrified horses free, their eyes wide and wild. Coyotes fled yelping into the night, their courage broken by the inferno. But the leader fought on, relentless. It lunged, claws raking across the Guardian's side, and the beast stumbled, blood gushing dark. My heart clenched, panic clawing at my throat. Without thinking, I raised my rifle, sighted on the leader's burning eyes, and pulled the trigger. The bullet struck true, slamming into its shoulder. It howled, stumbling, rage twisting its monstrous face. It turned toward me, teeth bared, ready to charge, but the Guardian seized the opening. With a roar that rattled the earth, it sank its jaws into the leader's throat and wrenched. Flesh tore, bone cracked. The leader's cry died in a choking gurgle, and then it collapsed, twitching once before going still. The silence that followed was deafening. The surviving coyotes fled into the trees, their order broken, their master slain. The men sagged against the fences, some laughing shakily, some weeping, all too exhausted to cheer. The fire still burned, but the worst had passed. The Guardian stood over the fallen leader, chest heaving, blood soaking its fur. Its eyes found mine through the haze of smoke and ash. And in that look, I felt the weight of the pact settle heavier than ever. We had won, for now, but victory had a price. The double R lay in ruins. Half the herd gone, the barn reduced to cinders, men shaken to their cores. And me, standing with a rifle in hand, bound to a creature that had saved us but demanded something in return. As the first pale light of dawn touched the horizon, I understood the truth. The Guardian hadn't just fought the leader. It had claimed the double R through me, and the land itself had accepted the blood price. Dawn broke over the double R like a pale, sickly ghost. The fire had finally died down, leaving behind nothing but blackened beams and the stink of wet ash. Smoke still curled lazily upward, carried by the morning wind, a grim marker of the night we'd just survived. The men moved like shadows, hauling water, tending to burns, dragging carcasses of coyotes into a heap by the road. Not a word of celebration passed between them. We'd won, yes, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like we'd buried something sacred in the soil, something that wouldn't stay down. I stood in the yard, boots sunk in the damp ash, staring at the ruined barn. Horses pawed nervously at the ground, their eyes rolling white whenever the smoke shifted. Half the herd was gone, scattered into the hills, and the rest pressed tight together in the far pasture, uneasy, as though waiting for the night to return. the guardian was gone. After killing the leader, it had limped back into the treeline without a glance, leaving me with the ranch in ruins and a weight pressing down on my chest. But I felt it, somewhere close, not gone, not resting. Watching, always watching. That's when I noticed the earth. Where the leader's body had fallen, the soil was black, darker than ash. The men had dragged the carcass to burn it, but the patch of ground it stained was wrong. The dirt clung together like tar, glistening wet even in the dry morning air. I knelt and touched it, and my fingers came away slick, not with blood, but something thicker, older, and the land hummed. Not a sound, but a vibration beneath my palm, like a heartbeat far below the surface. The ground was alive, thrumming with the memory of what had happened. That I jerked back, wiping my hand on my jeans, but the feeling clung, buzzing under my skin. By noon, the men had started asking questions. Where had the black wolf come from? Why did it fight the coyotes like it owned the land? Why did it seem to know me? I lied, of course. Said it was a stray wolf, meaner than most, just happened to cross paths with the pack. No one believed me, not fully. Ranch hands aren't dumb. They've seen storms break in the middle of a clear sky. Cattle refuse to cross invisible lines in the pasture. They know the land has its secrets, but none of them pressed. Maybe they didn't want the truth. Maybe they'd already seen it in my face. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the bunkhouse, every groan of the wind sounded like claws on the walls. The memory of the guardian's eyes burned in my skull. Not animal eyes, not fully human either. Something in between, claiming me with a look. Around midnight, I gave up on sleep and walked to the far pasture. The herd shifted uneasily but didn't scatter. They recognized something in me now, the same way they had calmed under the guardian's presence. That realization chilled me more than the October wind. At the edge of the treeline, I saw it, not in full form, just a shape, hunched, half hidden in shadow. Two eyes gleaming faintly. Watching, always watching. That I didn't call out, didn't move closer. We simply stood there, the cattle at my back, the darkness at my front, and a silence thick enough to smother every thought. And then I understood. This wasn't protection out of kindness. This was ownership. The guardian hadn't saved the double R for US. It had claimed the land, the herd, and me as part of its territory. I was its tether to the human world, its voice in the daylight, its anchor in the soil, the fire, the blood, the battle. It had sealed something deeper than a pact. It had rewritten the ranch itself. I remembered Marcus' words, that night weeks earlier when he stood before me as a man instead of a beast. Sometimes it's easier to let people see the truth in their own time. Now I was seeing it, clear as the sunrise. The guardian wasn't just passing through. It wasn't just protecting the double R. It was the double R. And I was bound to it, as surely as fence posts to barbed wire. When the wind shifted and carried its musky scent across the pasture, the cattle lowered their heads, not in fear, but in reverence. My stomach twisted. That I whispered into the night, though I didn't know if I was speaking to myself or to the shadow in the trees. What do you want from me? The eyes blinked once, slow, deliberate, and then vanished into the dark. The answer would come. Maybe not tonight, but soon. And when it did, I knew it wouldn't be a request. That it would be a command. The night of the final moon came quietly at first, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears, makes every sound exaggerated, every shadow alive. I knew it was coming. The air smelled of wet grass and pine, sharp with the promise of rain. But beneath that, I could smell something older. Musky, irony-stained. Waiting. I saddled Buster, my old quarter horse, and rode out to the far pasture. The rest of the men stayed back at the bunkhouse, wary of the dark, trusting in me, or maybe fearing that what I'd been bound to was beyond them. I didn't blame them. I still didn't fully understand it myself. The cattle were restless, milling in tight circles, hooves stamped against the dirt, their low balls carried in the night, almost like warnings. I ran my hand along Buster's mane, whispering, "Easy, boy, easy." Then I saw it. The guardian emerged from the treeline, massive and dark against the pale sliver of moon. But this time it was different. Its fur bristled, every muscle taut, eyes glowing orange in the faint light, It moved with purpose, slow, deliberate that I dismounted, rifle forgotten, heart hammering in my chest. The bond we shared pressed down heavier than ever. I could feel it in my bones, in the thrum of the earth beneath my feet. This wasn't just a fight, not just a warning. This was the final reckoning. It approached the northern edge of the corral and paused, staring at me. There was no anger, no hunger, only expectation. I swallowed hard. What do you want? Its ears flicked forward. The growl it released was low, resonant, almost a vibration through the soil itself. Then it stepped aside, revealing something at the edge of the pasture, a calf. Freshly born, trembling, its fur slick with birth fluids. Its mother was nowhere in sight. I understood immediately. This was the test. The sacrifice of trust, not life. The guardian had been protecting us. Yes, but it demanded that I, too, uphold its rules. Care. Watch. Honor the cycle of life it had sworn to defend. The smaller animals scattered, but the calf didn't move. The guardian's gaze swept over the pasture, taking in the resting cattle, the fire-damaged corral, the trampled ground. And then it looked back at me, eyes burning with quiet insistence. I stepped forward, tentatively at first, then with resolve. The guardian allowed it, stepping back into the shadows just enough to give me space. I reached down, feeling the newborn's small body shiver in my hands, its life trembling like a candle in the wind. For the first time, I understood fully what the guardian had been teaching. Protection isn't always about strength. Sometimes it's patience. Sometimes it's compassion. Sometimes it's sacrifice. I led the calf to the herd, whispering soft encouragement, guiding it to safety. The cattle shifted around us, senses on high, but they trusted me. The bond had been extended, woven through fear, fire, and blood, now anchored in quiet understanding. When I straightened, the guardian emerged fully from the tree-line, towering over me, massive, majestic, terrifying. Its gaze softened, not entirely human, not entirely beast, but something older, wiser. And then, almost imperceptibly, it bowed its head. A gesture of acknowledgement, of approval. The first light of dawn spilled across the pasture. The guardian faded back into the forest, vanishing as silently as it had appeared, leaving only the smell of pine and musk behind. The men had gathered at the edge of the pasture, silent and awed, unsure if what they had witnessed was real or a legend finally walking among them. I stood alone with the cattle, the earth still humming faintly underfoot, and realized the truth of the double R. The ranch wasn't just land. It was a living entity, and I was now a part of its life, its bond, its protection. The guardian hadn't just saved us from predators. It had passed the responsibility to me. From that day on, every moonless night, every restless herd, every distant howl in the woods reminded me. I was chosen, bound, watchful. The monsters out there were real, yes, but so were the guardians. Sometimes, the most terrifying things are the ones that demand respect rather than fear. And as the sun rose over the ruined barn, the surviving cattle grazing quietly, I understood that I was no longer just a rancher. I was a keeper of something older than memory, a witness to the strange, the supernatural, and the terrifying beauty of the world we rarely see. The guardian had claimed the land, the herd, and me. And I had accepted, because out here, under the endless Texas sky, survival isn't just about strength. It's about understanding who, or what, is on your side. And I knew, deep in my bones, that when the next threat came, I wouldn't face it alone. The double R would endure, and so would I.
Thank you for watching my video. Please like, subscribe, and share my channel with your friends and family. You can also click on the bell icon to be notified when I post new videos.